very good morning. Terrific Tuesday today. Welcome to today's episode of Morning Well. We'll talk about three things. It was Rotation Monday again, AstraZeneca's vaccine efficacy, and FX Roundup. The markets climbed on Monday, buoyed by promising news from a third vaccine candidate. The University of Oxford and AstraZeneca said their vaccine was found to be as much as 90% effective in preventing COVID-19 infections, depending on the dose given, without serious side effects. It also may offer easier distribution than other vaccines under development. We'll talk about this a bit later. That rallied some of the hardest hit sectors of the pandemic like entertainment, cruise liners and airlines in hopes of broader economic recovery come the second half of next year. Shares of Walt Disney finished up 3.5%, while shares of Carnival and Royal Caribbean and Norwegian all rose about 4% on the day. Performance in the technology sector was mixed, with pandemic beneficiaries like Zoom and Grubhub finishing down 2%, while ride-hailers like Uber and Lyft both moved up 3%. Shares of AstraZeneca fell more than 3% in London despite the company's positive news, as overall efficacy of its vaccine candidate fell short of that reported by Moderna and Pfizer. The Dow rose about 327 points, the S&P and the Nasdaq composite gained about 0.6% and 0.2% respectively. Treasury slumped. The 10-year yields were up about 3 basis points to above 0.85. Dollar rose against most of the G10 peers, with the yen down the most. The pound and oil gained, while gold fell back. Asian equity futures are narrowly mixed. Monday's results from AstraZeneca and Oxford left big questions about how the vaccine will ultimately stack up against the shots from Moderna and Pfizer. My issue was to understand what efficacy rate to believe. I heard numbers like 62%, 72% and 90%, which got me thinking what's happening over here. So interesting story kind of played out. The higher efficacy result of 90% applied to a subset of trial participants, somewhere above 3,000 out of the 23,000, that received half a dose of the vaccine followed by a full standard dose. The remaining bulk of the trial volunteers received 2 full doses and produced a lower efficacy rate of 62%. A dosing error in early clinical trials by Oxford led researchers to focus on an unplanned half dose given to some trial volunteers, eventually resulting in higher efficacy results announced on Monday. This is according to AstraZeneca. Professor Sarah Gilbert, one of Oxford's lead scientists on the vaccine, said researchers were digging into why the half dose regime was shown to be more effective. She said it could be that the lower first dose better mimics the natural human immune system, coaxing the body to be ready for an eventual fight against the virus in a way that makes the second standard dose more effective. Unlike shots under development from Pfizer and Moderna, AstraZeneca's vaccine can be stored at temperatures above 0 degrees Celsius, potentially easing the distribution process as well. In other vaccine-related news, Merck will buy Oncolimmune for $425 million, gaining access to a potential COVID therapy. The US aims to start vaccination in less than 3 weeks. 30,000 doses of Regeneron's antibody cocktail will be shipped on Tuesday after it got emergency use authorization. And Novavax jumped after an infectious disease expert made positive comments about its own vaccine durability during a Jefferies call with clients. Lastly, on the FX front, the US dollar traded higher against most major currencies on Monday. The gains were sharp and abrupt, coming shortly after the market economics PMI reports. According to the latest numbers, manufacturing and service activity expanded at a faster rate in the month of November. This improvement is a surprise considering that COVID-19 cases shot up this month, forcing states to roll out new restrictions. However, these statistics also explain why some governors have gone to lengths to avoid new restrictions despite alarming virus cases. At some point though, with hospitals overwhelmed, they may need to consider, but in the meantime, the fear of what's to come after Thanksgiving did not stop equity and currency traders from celebrating today's report. Meanwhile, in the Euro US rose briefly above 1.19 before U-turning quickly on the back of strong US data. Eurozone PMIs also were not as bad as economists had feared, with manufacturing holding up better in Germany and the region as a whole this month. Given the breadth of the recent lockdowns, a more significant contraction was expected. That could still happen as these numbers are subject to revisions. Germany's IFO report is due for release tomorrow, and there's a good chance business confidence soared more significantly than activity last month. And if that's the case, we could see that reflected in how the Euro USD will behave. That's the update. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.